Hey guys, and welcome back to the latest episode of the Elevate HD podcast. My name is Holly, and I am your host as always. And this is going to be a solo episode where I will be covering all things burnout. What happens, what is it, how to deal with it, how to manage it, and how to get over it, because this is actually something that I've experienced quite recently, to be honest. And on this podcast, I'm always fully transparent and open about all my celebrations, all my wins, but also all of my struggles and things I go through, the challenges I face and how I overcome them. And I think by sharing my story and my own experience, and also how I've navigated these things, it's going to be very beneficial for you if you do come across it in the future, or if you do experience something similar and you want to know how to get out of it. So first of all, what is burnout? And I think a lot of us know by now what this is. It's probably a feeling of overwhelm, but to the point where things just get too much for you and you just crash. So I think these days, especially with social media, but just in this society in general, we are kind of living in this grind culture where you have to be 100% on it in every single thing that you do. You can't have any rest. You can't have any days off. You have to be always on top of things and always working towards something. And it's almost frowned upon to have some downtime, to have like a day off, to have a Sunday where you just like have a lie in, lay around and chill for the day. Like, it's a culture that very much rewards people who are always going for something and who never take a break and never have an off switch. But humans are humans, and none of us are perfect, and none of us can go full on 100% all guns blazing forever. There will be a time where that will come back to bite you in the ass. So I think it's really important to spot the signs of burnout before the burnout actually happens, and trying to find out your own pink flags before the red flags arrive and before the burnout takes over, because burnout can be incapacitating. It can leave you feeling extremely useless. You feel like you don't want to do anything. You just want to retreat into your bedroom and hide from the world. You don't feel like there's a way out. So if we nip it in the bud and get there and correct it before we even get to the burnout, that is going to be the best thing. But I think to do this, it's important to kind of be aware of what other people go through and what signs they kind of noticed or did not notice leading up to the burnout. And then for you, hopefully you'll be able to kind of spot these signs or something similar in yourself. So for me recently, obviously, as I said, I have experienced a little bit of a burnout phase. Um, and to be honest, I probably could have spotted it if I tried to. But I suppose I was pulling the wool over my own eyes and trying to bury my head in the sand and pretend that everything's fine, because I didn't want to stop and I didn't want to pull back, because I am a very productive person. I'm a very efficient person. I don't really like taking breaks. I don't really like downtime. I don't spend a lot of time chilling. And to me, that's like my comfort zone, is being busy, 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 because I suppose it doesn't give you a lot of time to stop and reflect and, be okay in your own presence and be mindful. And I suppose that's maybe a coping mechanism for me, that I stay very busy so I don't have to be mindful and present and think retrospectively on things, or, think about my own life and everything like that. So I started a new job back at the end of January 2023. So this January, and I absolutely love it. So I have been working in clinical trials for over 3 years now. So well, no more than that. So I started in 2018 in a hospital. So 5 years in clinical trials now, but 3 years working in like an industry based job, the big bad guys. And this is the first company I've worked for that I just absolutely love it. I love the work culture. I love the people. I love how they manage things. I love my studies. I love my sites. I love the people at the hospitals that I visit. It's very realistic amounts of travel. Like in previous jobs, I was traveling to site 9 times per month, like all over the country. This time I have a couple of sites and most of them are very close to me. So there's not a huge amount of travel. It's a really, really good work-life balance. Everyone is lovely. But at the same time, when I am working, it is pretty full on. And I would be sitting there at my desk from 8 a.m. to 5:30 or 6 p.m. working. And it does take a toll mentally. And I think psychologically you feel, well, if I'm working from home and I'm working at a desk and I'm just sitting down, like it's not really very taxing. And obviously, physically, you're just sitting down, it's not going to be kind of taxing on the body, but on the brain and mentally, it is exhausting. And I kind of didn't give myself credit for that I was working so hard on this new study, at this new job, to be good at my job, to impress everyone, obviously to pass my probation, to put my foot down and kind of leave my mark, and make a good first impression, that I wasn't really taking into account how mentally challenging it was and how fatiguing it was. So I was kind of still going 100% in everything else. So I'd finish my job at, as I said, 5:30, 6. I would go to the gym and train, and training recently has been taken up a notch, by my own request, to be honest, because obviously recently I went through a 4-week massing block where we pushed food up, we pushed my training stimulus up, like kind of everything was at its peak to make the most of those 4 weeks. And although the training sessions weren't super long, they were definitely very, very difficult mentally and physically, because I would have a lot of rest pause sets, I'd have a lot of giant sets, I'd have a lot of supersets, and a lot of different volume accumulation techniques that were kind of making the most of my time at the gym. But it meant that every minute of my gym time was full and squeezed to its full capacity. So it got to the point where I was literally going into the gym. I didn't want to speak to anyone because I didn't want them to take up more of my time. I didn't want to stop and chat. I just wanted to go in, get the session done, and leave. And there were times over these past couple of weeks I have gone into the gym and felt like crying, just because I felt so overwhelmed with the amount of work I've had to do in the gym after having a full day of very solid work in my career. So I have felt very overwhelmed with that. And also, I do put a lot of pressure on myself, obviously, as an athlete and a coach myself, to always try and be optimal at everything. So, both in terms of setting up the exercise and in terms of executing the exercise, but also in terms of my progression and my intensity and my effort levels. I always wanted to push myself to as far as I could, even when I went into the session feeling I am wrecked. And maybe if I were auto-regulatory, or if I were to tell my client, I would say to them, look, you've had a really, really tough day. Maybe just leave a few more reps in the tank. Maybe don't push yourself as much. Maybe just kind of focus on the contractions and the pumps rather than progressing and chasing the load. But obviously, we never look at ourselves objectively. And that's why I have a coach. And that's why most of you guys have a coach, or should have a coach, because we never can see ourselves in an objective light. We always are biased towards us being the special snowflake and us not being, just like everyone else. So we are all humans too. We're not aliens. And all of us need to take a rest sometimes. So, yeah. So, coupled with obviously getting to the gym knackered, having a very intense session where I was kind of trying to progress every single thing, then coming home from the gym, it would be like 7, 7:30, whatever. I would eat a meal, and then I would start all my coaching stuff. And obviously, designing programs for people, setting up clients, getting back to any feedback I hadn't got back to that day, any sort of questions that anyone had asked that day. And as well as that, like all of the content as well, because I don't know if you've noticed, but Instagram has really stepped things up a notch in terms of what it expects from its creators and its users, in that it's not really enough to just be a coach anymore. You can't just get results and get the clients coming in. Like, you need to play the game like everyone else does. You need to do the content creation. You need to make the reels. You need to make sure that everyone knows that you're coaching and that you'll be a good fit for them. You need to speak to your audience and make sure that they understand what your message is and that you align with them and that your morals are the same as them. So obviously I've put a lot of effort into my content creation. So that takes a toll. And also, like, looking through Instagram and seeing every other coach, like, I probably am living in this little bit of a bubble, or like a echo chamber, I suppose, because everyone I follow is pretty much a coach themselves. So I go through my newsfeed and I see coach, and everyone is smashing the content. They're hiring videographers, they're doing reels, they're doing educational content, they're doing this, that, and the other. And I kind of forget that I still have a full-time job. And obviously it is hard work, and I feel really like pleased and satisfied for those coaches, and like fair dues to them for putting the hard work in, because it isn't easy for anyone. But when you are someone like me that also works 40 to 45 plus hours a week in a different job, it is hard to expect myself to do as much and to be as present on social media as everyone else. And I decided that for myself because I love coaching, and it's something that I absolutely get so much reward and pleasure from, coaching people, both in terms of physique goals and just body confidence and self-love and all that type of thing. I love it. But I decided a while ago that I wanted to keep it as something, as a pleasure for me and not a full-time thing, because I love my main job. I love being a scientist. I love saving people's lives with medicine and having an impact in that world. But I also love having the impact on people individually by changing their physique, making them feel good about themselves, and changing their whole life in that respect as well. So I want to have the best of both worlds, and I've decided that for myself. But at the same time, I need to accept that it's not my full-time job, so I can't treat it like a full-time job and have it at the forefront of my mind every single day. Like, I keep my clients to a small number because I love having a select amount of clients that I know everything about. I know their family situation, I know their dogs' names, I know whether they've been on a Tinder date this week, I know their struggles, I know their therapy experiences, I know everything, and I want to keep it that way. So I think I was just berating myself for not being a full-time coach when I'm not a full-time coach. And I love doing it just for the pleasure and just for the fun. So that was that. I think it's like the comparison on social media against everyone who looks like they're training hard all the time, everyone that needs no days off, everyone that's just like bashing out the content every single day. And it just gets a lot. Like, no matter what someone looks like on social media, and I think we all are aware of this deep down, but it doesn't always kind of hit home when we look at them and see how well they're doing, is that Instagram is all smoke and mirrors. Like, I'm sure if you went onto my Instagram and scrolled down, you would not see or have any sort of inkling that I've had a burnout or that I've crashed. You would just see, oh, Holly's doing well, Holly's posting good content, Holly's going to photo shoots, going to events, and you wouldn't know because I'm not going to post about it, obviously. And I think podcasts are a really good way to be kind of honest about that, because it's much longer form content, so you can actually explain how you're doing as you go, and you can get a bit more into detail about your personal life and stuff like that. And I suppose your listeners are a bit more loyal to you and they kind of get to know you. And I hope you have got to know me as well throughout my podcast journey. So yeah, all of that, as well as competing wise. Obviously, I have competed in this industry for nearly 6 years now. And I suppose it comes to a point where, obviously, with the advent of me turning 30 at the end of the year, I don't know if you guys know, I know I look youthful, but unfortunately, I am going to be in my 30s this year. And I know people say life begins at 30. I have heard that, and I've heard things get better at 30, so I'm hoping they're right. But moving into my 30s, obviously a new decade of my life, a new phase of my life, I was wondering, would competing still be a part of the Holly that is in her 30s rather than the Holly that is in her 20s? Like, I started competing when I was 24. I'm now 29 now, obviously 30 at the end of the year. So nearly 6 years of competing where it's been my whole life. And I suppose seeing other people who are living their life, going on holiday, getting engaged, getting married, having kids, it made me kind of retrospectively look back and say, is the reason I'm not in that position because I've been competing and I've put myself in a bit of a bubble where I eat, sleep, and breathe bodybuilding all the time, and I never really ventured out past that. And I've become a bit of, I don't know, just a bit of a hermit in that respect, especially when on prep, when you're not going out to eat, you're not socializing, you're not drinking, you're just kind of doing the do and ticking the boxes. And that's why I, in off season, try and balance my life so much. And I go out to eat and I go out to drink and I go out with my friends and I go on holiday. And I really, really think that that is valuable, to have that balance in off season. And that's what kind of Sophie and I were talking about on the last podcast, is that she thinks that if she were rigid and on it 24/7 with her off season and her prep, she doesn't think she'd still be in this game. And now she's about to make her pro debut as a figure competitor in the IFBB. So it just goes to show that you need to find your own way to have longevity. So yeah, it just made me think, like, as I go into my 30s, like, is this what I want to still be a priority? But I do think that there is still unfinished business for me in competing. I haven't yet done a pro qualifier. I've never done a show abroad except for one show I did in 2019. I did the WNBF Worlds in New York, but I've never done like an IFBB show abroad. I'm not sure if I'm going to dabble in Diva again. I don't think I will, but obviously it's always a possibility. There's lots of different things that I feel like I still need to tick off. So I feel like I have at least one more season in me, but it has taken some time for me to have a think about, is this really it for me? But I have thought, well, if last season was my last season, I would kind of leave on a bittersweet note, because I would have had my season without knowing it was my last one, if that makes sense. So if I'm going into my final season, I want to know it's my final season so I can make the most of it. I could love every single minute of it, like the pain, the suffering, but as well as the celebrations and the wins. Like, I want everything to be maxed out to its fullest. So I suppose I have that in the back of my head. Like, I don't want to end on my last season without knowing it was my last, without making the most of it, without like literally seizing every single second of it. So basically, all of this has come at a head all at once to me, and I just burned out to the point where I didn't want to train. I didn't want to go on Instagram. I didn't really want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to do anything. Like, even leaving the house to go get steps felt like a chore. Like, I just nearly felt like crying at the smallest of tasks. Like, even going to the shop felt like the end of the world, and everything just weighed down so heavy on me. I ended up at the end of that 4 week mass phase. I took a deload and active rest phase. And usually during a deload, we have a bit of a devolume where you do like 50%, 50% sets. No, what is it? 2 sets of everything, 50% load, 50% reps for the first half of the week, and then 100% load, 50% reps for the second half of the week. But I just couldn't go to the gym. So I just didn't go for like nearly a week and a half. And when I did manage to finally pull myself back, I literally did the lightest faffy sessions you could imagine, because it's all I could manage to do. And even before I went back, I was like, I don't think I'll be able to go back to the gym. Like, I just felt, is this it? Like, is this my love for the gym? Has it just gone now? Like, have I all of a sudden just got to my peak and just to my point of no return, where I've just felt that's it? Like, I can't train anymore. Like, it's just not for me anymore. And obviously, kind of looking back, like, such a rash, sudden decision probably means that it's not kind of realistic, because if it were coming to a point where my gym journey was slowly coming to an end, it would kind of phase out. I'd start going from 5 times to 4 times, and 4 times to 3 times, and slowly phase out. But I just went from going 5 times a week, all guns blazing, to not at all. And I suppose looking back, I now realize that that was just kind of a symptom of the burnout, was just the complete lack of desire to train. So yeah, I felt the guilt of that, obviously not training. I didn't want to do anything, like, and it's hard, like, when you get in that cycle of the worse you feel, the less you want to do, and the less you want to do, the worse you feel, and you just kind of go around in these vicious circles. So I ended up booking a flight to go home for 4 days. So I went home, spent time with my mum and dad, had long decisions about my past, my present, my future, what I valued in myself and my life, what I hoped for in the future in terms of my career, in terms of my family, in terms of my love life, like literally everything. And put everything out on the table. And it felt so good just to take out the tangled ball in my head and just unravel it all and put it all out there, so it was out in the open for everyone to listen to. And it was so helpful. And even though we didn't necessarily fix everything, and not everything has been completely resolved, they always say a problem shared is a problem halved, and I absolutely agree with that. And that's what I really kind of appreciate with both my family and my friends since I've been struggling the past few weeks, is that they've all been like, you've been quiet, what's wrong with you? Or not what's wrong with you, but you've been quiet, like, how can I help? And I really appreciate that. And I feel like you really know who your best friends are when you go quiet and you kind of check out and you go a bit distant, and they check in on you. The ones who check in on you when you go distant, when you go quiet, when you haven't replied to them, they're the ones that you need to keep around. And unfortunately, I've had a good few people reach out saying, you haven't been yourself. You haven't been chatty in the WhatsApp groups. That's not like you. We miss chatty Holly. What's wrong? And it's been really nice to have that support. So the support of my family and friends has been amazing. But once I got it out on the table, like, obviously there's only so much you can do that your friends and family can do for you. Obviously they can support you, but pulling yourself out of the hole is mainly up to you, and you need to command the ship and steer it in the direction you want it to. So you kind of need to break it down into steps and think, okay, what is causing me to burn out? Maybe it's my training, maybe it's my job, maybe it's my family or my kids, maybe it's all the nutrition stuff I have to worry about, maybe it's these hobbies that are causing me stress, maybe it's studying. And compartmentalize them into different sets and just kind of put them into different piles and approach each one separately and think, okay, right now, what is the minimum that I need to do right now to keep afloat and to keep me going? And that's all you need to do. Just do the minimum you need to do to get by. And anything more than that is a positive, but you don't need to worry about that right now, because trying to overwhelm yourself with stuff that you don't need to do and all these extra things that you hope you can do but you don't have time for is just not necessary right now. So just focus on the things you need to do. So for me, for training was the first thing. And I basically checked in with Joe and I was honest with him and I said, look, I can't handle this training at the moment. There's too much going on in my life. I'm really busy with work. I'm really busy with coaching. I have so much going on with like the travel for work and all the things I have to do for my coaching business and everything like that. I just don't have the time. And he was really responsive. He was really accepting. And I really appreciate how receptive he was to me being open and honest with him. Because some coaches would just say, you obviously don't want it hard enough, get on. If you don't want it enough, but he was not like that. So he took my training volume way down. So I still have 5 training days, but the sessions are much, much shorter. I can get in and out of the gym in like under an hour, which is what I need right now. And what he was saying to me, and I agree with, is although my training previously may have been optimal on paper, for me right now, it's not optimal because I'm living such a busy life where everything is so stretched that having that extra pressure on me and that extra stress is not going to be conducive to optimal results or optimal progression. So by pulling things back, allowing me to go into the gym, to feel excited to train, to enjoy my sessions, to not put that massive pressure on myself, is going to be in the long run more conducive to my goals and to my progress. So I think that was the first thing I did. The second thing I did with training is I downloaded the RP app. And no, this is not an ad because I'm not sponsored and I'm not making any money from this, but Joe and Jasmine are sponsored. You guys say RP, so like Renaissance periodization. They have this app where you basically input your whole mesocycle of training in there. You put in your starting sets and it basically auto regulates your volume and your load and your reps on the feedback that you give it after each and every exercise. And I don't know about you guys, but when I'm filling in my check-in sheet, I find it so impossible to know, okay, what was my soreness on this day? Or did I feel a pump on that day? And you're like thinking retrospectively and you never remember properly. So for me, having that real-time assessment and monitoring, saying, how was your soreness? Did you have any joint pain? Have your muscle group healed since the last time you trained them? How was your pump? They ask you in real time and you just log it as you go. And from there, they auto regulate and tell you, right, tomorrow you're going to do this much weight for this many reps. And then the next day you're going to do this many sets. And it literally lays it all out for you. So once you've plugged in your initial bit, so once you fill in your initial week of training and your initial sets, it then will auto regulate for you and tell you what you should be doing in the next training days, which for me takes a lot of pressure off because I don't feel, right, I need to push myself as hard as possible. I need to do as much as possible. I wish I could have got more. I wish I did more reps. I wish I did more sets. I wish I did more weight. It just tells me what to do. It takes the guesswork out, removes the emotional attachment that I have to the training, and I just get on and get done with it. And I think that will be really helpful for a lot of you guys as well. So that is that. And I think another really important aspect in terms of getting yourself out of the burnout is realizing that you are only human. You are not a workhorse. You cannot work 24/7 every minute of the day. You need some downtime. And if you do have that downtime, that is only going to make you more productive for your on time. And I think I lose sight of that because I love working. I love coaching. I love creating content. I love working with my clients. I love all of that stuff. So I don't see it as work, but it actually obviously is because it's mentally taxing on my brain, and it does take a lot of effort because I'm thinking a lot. I'm designing training plans. I'm doing nutrition plans. I'm making sure everything is optimal for my clients, and I don't switch off then. So I think it's really important to prioritize that downtime at the end of the evening, to switch your brain off, to wind yourself down before bed, because I wasn't sleeping. Like I was going to bed maybe at like 10 and I wasn't falling asleep till like 2 or 3 a.m. because I was so wired because I never gave myself that time to switch off. So I've gotten back into reading again. I'm sure some of you have seen on my story because I love to post my quotes on my Kindle. honestly, if you're into reading, a Kindle is the best investment you can make. Like, it's so annoying having to buy loads of books and having loads of things heavy, like hanging around, bringing them anywhere. Like, if you go on holiday, you have to bring like 7 books with you. This Kindle is so small, it literally fits in my pocket, and it's just so handy. At a touch of a button you can read a book. So I've read around 17 books now this year. I want to get to 30 because last year I read 25, so I'd like to read a bit more and kind of incrementally improve my target. And I'm just loving it. Like, I do mix between fiction and non-fiction, but I find the non-fiction isn't as relaxing, and the fictional reading does provide some escapism from normal life. So I've gone through most of the Colleen Hoover books. I'm now going through a lot of the Taylor Jenkins Reid's books. I'm reading an Emily Henry book. And another thing I want to do, which is leading on from that, is finding a hobby outside of bodybuilding, which I haven't really had the opportunity to do recently, obviously, because I've been so busy. And honestly, the thought of doing something additional on top of my work, on top of my training, on top of my coaching, on top of my content creation, on top of the podcast, it felt too much. But I'm going to give myself some leeway and give myself one day where I do a new hobby. And I'm really thinking about going to a book club on Wednesday, because I love reading and I love talking about reading. But a lot of my friends either don't read or don't read the same books as me. And often I get my mum to read a book just so I can talk to her about it, because I know, like, she's a massive reader herself. So it's really nice to have someone to talk about those things. But I think a book club would be really good. Obviously, it's outside of bodybuilding. No one there will know what I do or that I have physique goals or look at anything to do with my body at all. It's just purely about reading, about the fictitious characters, about the story. And I think that'd be a really good way to get out and explore kind of something else in my life. Another thing I've been thinking of is, obviously I live by myself right now. And I love it. Like, to be honest, I couldn't really imagine sharing a kitchen again. I know I'll eventually probably have to share a kitchen, but at the moment I have a full kitchen that is just full of my stuff. So I don't know how I'd share. But I would love some company at some times, and I've been really contemplating getting a dog, which would be a bit of a surprise for some of you, because I have been terrified of dogs for as long as I can remember. And it's because I've never had a dog ever, so I'm not used to them, and I've never been around them or got familiar with them. So I've always been terrified. But shout out to Jasmine and Joe, because without being in the middle of their 7 dogs of chaos, I never would have acclimatized to dogs, and I still would be really, really afraid of them. Like, to get to this point where I am now, that when I'm sitting there with Hunter and Lyra running around me, jumping on me, like lying down beside me, and Dagger coming up to me and playing fetch with me and like dropping things on my lap. And I even took a bite from him from a sleeve, which was a massive deal. I still can't believe I'd done that. And Mum was like, I can't believe you did that. I don't like watching it. It scares me. But to get to that point where I trust the dogs enough and they trust me enough, it just makes me think, wow, I can really do this. So I am thinking of getting a little puppy, but I don't want a big dog, because I'm a small girl. I don't need a big dog. I don't live in a massive house. So something small to keep me company. I went to puppy yoga with Jen last week, and we were around loads of baby dachshunds, and it was just the cutest thing ever. And I was like, oh my God, I'm getting so broody for a little puppy now. So I may have a new addition to the family with that at some point. Obviously, I do have to ask my landlord for permission. Hopefully, I can get one. They give me permission. It says it in my contract. But fingers crossed, they will be heartful enough to let me have that. So yeah, that is most of the things I've been working on, to be honest. And another thing I have to touch on, obviously, is therapy. Now, I have been working with a therapist. His name is James Elliott, and I've mentioned him a few times since the end of January, I think, after Christmas, when I had my first initial like post prep struggles. I started working with him, and I was doing pretty regular sessions for a while, like nearly weekly, and I was doing pretty well. And it got to the point where I was feeling okay, so I let them fall by the wayside a little bit, and they were becoming less and less frequent. And I felt that since letting that slide and neglecting that, I haven't been keeping up with the practices we've been working on or the exercises I'm meant to do, and I haven't been accountable to myself. So James actually did reach out to me today asking me if I was okay and how I was doing. So I definitely want to book in another session with him and keep on top of it, because I feel like therapy is something like a checkup. Like, you don't just go when something is wrong, you go to kind of maintain good mental health as well. So that's kind of just a notice for you guys, or an informative advice for you guys, that even if you feel good and if you feel happy, it's always worth checking in with a therapist anyway, because they might tell you, everything's great, don't worry about it. But it might be a good idea to just have regular checkups with a therapist to make sure you're doing okay, because we all have struggles. Our life is never perfect. There's always going to be things that we are going to be faced with and challenged with, and barriers in our way, and to be equipped with those tools to navigate them is really invaluable. And having the help of a therapist is just really, really priceless, in my opinion. It's definitely money well spent and a good investment. So yeah, that's what I found. So I've adapted my training. I have got in touch with my therapist again. I've picked up my hobby again. I want to go to a bookshop, a book club, to try and meet new people and kind of get out there. Because obviously, in a world of where I work from home and I go to the gym, like, there isn't a much opportunity to meet new people. So I think that'll be a good opportunity to meet new people. I've also, my dad has very kindly offered to buy me a keyboard, because when I was younger, when I was like 14, 15, I took up the piano, and within a year I was playing like grade 5 piano pieces. And this is not to blow my own horn, but I was just surprised at how quickly I picked it up. And then I dropped it after dropping music for my leaving certificate, which is like the equivalent of A levels. And I never picked it back up again, just because I found it was so stressful practicing 2 hours a day for exams that it kind of traumatized me a bit. But he wants me to pick it up again because he loved me playing. I really want to pick it up again because I loved playing, and I just want to play without any pressure and without feeling like I had to do an exam or go for a grade or play certain songs, or things like that, and just be under a lot of pressure for deadlines and stuff, and just play music I like, play pop songs, play like Rihanna, play Ariana Grande, anything I want, just to enjoy it and just to sit there and have something to switch off my brain in the evening that also feels productive. Because I think that's what I've realized is I can't just veg. I can't just sit there and watch endless amounts of TV, or scroll through Instagram, do nothing. Like, I have to have kind of productive, unproductive hobbies. So reading is productive, obviously. It's good for you to read. It's good to have that adventurous mindset. I think it develops my vocabulary and my creativity as well by reading. And as well, obviously, playing an instrument is always going to be an amazing skill to have. So those are the two things I'm kind of working on. In saying that, I did finish one series of Selling Sunset because I hadn't watched it in years, and I got hooked on that. So I watched that, and then I watched another one with my mum when I was at home. So that was my brainless activity that I did aloud for myself. So I think a bit of brainless activity is good, and I think it's good to get comfortable with doing nothing and being okay with not being busy, because I think a lot of us mask an issue either mentally or physically, or with relationships or with our job, by being so busy that you can't even think about it. But sometimes you need to rip the band-aid off and deal with the situation that you are faced with, instead of just masking it with being busy and having so much going on that you don't have time to think and be within your own thoughts. So that is what I would suggest. So hopefully, guys, from this you will take that burnout is normal, but it doesn't mean it's something you have to go through, because I think you should nip it in the bud. If you start to see your motivation start to dwindle in your training, if you start to feel overwhelmed at work and that things are getting on top of you, if you start to feel like you don't really want to do anything, and that you feel you don't want to see people, that things that you normally do you find easy are actually becoming quite hard for you, these are all the signs that you need to take a step back, reflect on your life, and realize, okay, what am I doing now? What's too much for me right now? And what priorities do I need to take, and just do the bare minimum for now until I build myself back up and get myself into a good place. And obviously share it with people, talk to your friends, talk to your family, talk to anyone, talk to me. Honestly, if you slide into my DMs and say, Holly, I really want to talk to you, I feel like I'm starting to burn myself out, I'd be more than happy to talk to you about it, because as I said, just sharing it makes the world of a difference, where you don't feel alone and you don't feel like you're the only one, because you're certainly not. And trust me, in this grind culture, there's a lot that goes on behind closed doors that you don't see, and people look like they're 100% all the time, when we know that's not possible, because everyone is a human. But yeah, hopefully that's helped you to feel less alone, and to feel like you're not going through it by yourself, and that you are only human like everyone else. We are all the same, and hopefully you'll find some solace in that. So thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed. If you did tune in and you got to the end, please take a screenshot, share it to your story, tag myself. I'm at Holly_Physique Collective on Instagram. If you want to sign up to my newsletter, which I release twice a week on all things fat loss, muscle gain, physique development, just go into the bio of this podcast episode. You will see a link to click there, so you can sign up to the email list, so you won't be left out of any tips and tricks that I have and secrets up my sleeve. But yeah, that is pretty much it, guys. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one.